All right, we are live and recording.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our CS Bars meeting for today, August 13th. We'll start with our roll call, please.
Jay Frickberg,
Present.
William Hunt,
Present.
Paul Kramer,
Present.
Kevin Marshall,
Present.
Jessica Park,
Present.
Karen Travis.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Members of the public can make written public comments submitted to our csbars@calbar.cal.gov email box. 4 written public comments were submitted and distributed to this committee more than 24 hours prior to this meeting. Verbal public comments for up to 3 minutes will be taken now. First, recognizing any individuals who signed up in advance. There were no people that signed up in advance. Now you can, if you still would like to, raise your hand using the raise hand function on your computer or the star or asterisk 9 on your phone. Do we have anyone that would like to make a public comment?
Thank you, Chair Frickberg. Yes, we do. There are 3 commenters with raised hands. The first one that I see is Ray Hayden. So if we would please recognize Ray Hayden for 3 minutes. And as is our custom, we will have a timer on Teresa Solinsky Square to help you keep track of your time. Welcome, Ray Hayden.
Thank you very much. I guess center takes the square. So that's old. I'm old. Anyways, on item 3.1, the first year law student exam dropped the written section for failing to be indicative of success on the California General Bar exam and also being detrimental to all exam takers, and that the written section is subjectively graded, which it should not be. The written section of the California General Bar exam should also be removed from that exam for failing to be indicative of success as a newly licensed lawyer, for having a detrimental effect on all exam takers, and for the unfair subjective grading of the written section. The multiple choice questions from Kaplan must be created in a fashion which meets acceptable professional examination requirements, in that the multiple choice questions must be honestly objective and fair, unlike the NCBE questions, which are not. The California General Bar exam, as far as remote exams. The California General Bar exam must be widely remote, hopefully worldwide, but to be truly effective and efficient for all exam takers. I'm in Florida and I would love to take the February exam, but I need to be able to take it from Florida. The first year law student exam fairness. There is still a plethora of material available to aid in those who are sitting for that first year law student examination to have a very solid opportunity to demonstrate their ability on the new MCQ only examination. There is no justification for the high failure rate of the past. Item 3.3, update on revision and guidelines impacting foreign educated applicants and LLM recipients. I don't have any comment on that. I'm just paying real close attention to it to make sure that the focus is on is honestly fair to those who have the foreign legal education and or the LLM degree. And the last note on provisionally licensed lawyer program participants. These poor folks got stuck in limbo because of the pandemic, and they've been working for a very long time, proving their value and worth to the profession of law and as members of the California Bar. It's time to seek direct admission to the California Bar for those participants who are in good standing. At this point, it would just be the correct thing to do. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great meeting.
Thank you, Ray Hayden. The next person that we see with a hand raised is Todd Hill. If we could please, oh, just a moment. Are we adjusting the timer? Okay. Okay. So Teresa, are we ready to reset the timer?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's recognize Todd Hill. Welcome, Todd Hill.
Thank you very much for having me. Esteemed members of CS Bars, my name is Todd Hill, and I'm a former student and board member of the People's College of Law, PCL. I'm before you today to address a critical issue, the role of governmental complicity in perpetuating racial educational and professional exclusion within California's legal education system. Early in the 20th century, cities like Baltimore enacted ordinances to create racially homogeneous neighborhoods. Blacks were prohibited from moving into white areas, and whites were prohibited from moving into black areas. Even after the Supreme Court invalidated such zoning ordinances in Buchanan v. Worley in 1917, many cities simply ignored the ruling. Similarly, racially restrictive covenants forbade non-whites from purchasing or occupying properties. These covenants, endorsed and enforced by government agencies at all levels, entrenched racial segregation. The Federal Housing Administration valued these covenants as a means to maintain racial harmony and reduce financial risk. Developers were often required to include these covenants to receive federal support, systematically excluding African Americans from new, affordable housing opportunities. Realtors who opposed restrictive covenants faced disciplinary actions, and Black individuals who defied them were often evicted or penalized by the courts. Fast forward to today, and we see echoes of this historical racial segregation in California's legal education system. The state bar, although operating in a different regulatory sphere, mimics these historical paths used by governments to restrict choice and opportunity for African Americans. By failing to adequately regulate unaccredited law schools and enforce compliance, the state bar has allowed institutions like PCL to perpetuate practices that disproportionately harm African American students and other marginalized communities. De jure discrimination, defined as discrimination enforced by law or official government policy, contrasts with de facto discrimination, which occurs through social practices and institutions without legal enforcement. The state bar's non-interference policy, much like the FHA's valorization of racially restrictive covenants, effectively sanctions the exclusion and deprivation of vulnerable populations. This policy creates barriers to entry, limits competition, and drives up tuition costs, making legal education less accessible. It's notable that in either case, whether it be de jure or de facto segregation, there likely is a mandatory duty under the government code, specifically 815.6, for proactive addressing of such issues. It's not the case that it is something that's supposed to be left for future CS bars to handle. And so I ask and implore that you address the issues that I've previously presented to you in my public comment and are ongoing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Todd Hill. We see an additional hand from George Leal. And then next, I believe potentially there will be a public comment from Martin Pritikin. Welcome, George Leal.
Say good afternoon, everybody. I'm now former Dean Leal, and I would like just to take a brief opportunity to say farewell, a fond farewell to my former colleagues and staff, having been on the committee for the last 3 years. And I wanted to thank each of you for all of the time and effort each of you have provided and the expertise that I think has been valuable to both staff and the committee. I want to thank Natalie in particular. It's always great to work with her. I know how busy she is with all of her responsibilities. And I would just like to leave, for me, this is my swan song. I joined the Committee of Bar Examiners over 15 years ago, and with a year and a half of service there, and then staff, as many of you recall, and now as a former dean, I think I bring some perspective to, the function of the committee and how it interacts with the schools. And my only comment, and I don't mean to be overly critical, would be, it's been a bit disappointing and frustrating for me personally as a former member to have had so little time or little input, frankly, in some very major issues that came before the committee that impacted directly to my school, other registered unaccredited schools, and many of the CALs. One of the core values that I know that the State Bar seeks to promote is respect. And I would like to just say that, for instance, in today's agenda, having fewer than 72 hours for the CS bars to, to provide any input at all with regard to the proposed amendments to the unaccredited guidelines is, somewhat disrespectful in my opinion. They haven't been fully revised in over 15 years, and I'm not sure what the rush is to avoid having the deans, and I'm really happy to see Dean Hunt now on the committee, given his long tenure as a owner and operator of a registered school, and along with others, including Dean Park. It goes almost without saying, but I'll say it. I mean, another example was we were never once given the opportunity to discuss promote or, advise with regard to the change of the format to the first-year law students exam. First change of that exam in 40 years, and CS Bars wasn't even asked to provide an opinion. Had I been asked as a member, I would have strongly supported it because I thought it was the right thing to do. So going forward, I know there's a lot of issues that will be before the committee. I hope staff and the committee, and particularly the committee member assigned, will provide additional time and have more of an interest in having real dialogue with committee members who are deans, who have been spending many, if not most of their professional careers teaching law students and administering law schools. And that's the expertise that I know that many of the committee have, that not all the staff members do. So with that, like the Academy Awards, it's time, the band is struck up, it's time for me to say goodbye. I hope what I've said today resonates with some of you, and again, thanks for the opportunity to provide what little insight I've been able to. Thanks again. Bye.
Apologize, I was muted. Next, we would like to recognize Martin Pritikin, Dean of Purdue Global Law School.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I actually just wanted to give input for a few minutes on item 7 on the agenda about artificial intelligence. As an online law school, we've been dealing with this, and of course, whether you're online or not, everyone has to be thinking about this because it's out there, whether we like it or not. I just wanted to give a little bit of feedback, both from the faculty side and the examination side, and also from the student side. So from the faculty side, we actually encourage our faculty to use generative AI as fodder for ideas, both for essay questions or prompts to use during class or even multiple choice questions. We also emphasize heavily that if they are planning on using a product of generative AI in any sort of graded assessment, they absolutely must modify it significantly, both because, number one, you can't count on the AI to generate something that's accurate in the first instance, and B, it's still hazy about intellectual property issues, right? I mean, the AI came up with it, but who knows what it was trained on and whether it was using unauthorized sources. So we emphasize that faculty need to significantly modify anything they use as a starting point from generative AI. We are not yet at the point of using AI to grade student written work, although it's something that we kick around. I know it's something I actually suggested to the Committee of Bar Examiners as a way to potentially cut down on grading costs for the bar exam. I remember Chuck Buckendahl, the psychometrician, said that AI is not quite there yet, at least for assessments that are long and complicated enough in terms of the types of bar essays that students write, but something to keep in mind. On the student side, we've tried to strike a balance. So on the one hand, we have high stakes assessments like final exams that we administer online. We use browser lockdown software. We use Respondus. I don't think it's the one that the State Bar uses, but that should effectively prevent students from using generative AI during an exam. And then on the flip side, from the positive side, one thing we do or starting to do is encourage faculty to have assessments where students are not only permitted but required to use AI, where the assignment is do a prompt, show what the AI spits out, and then show us or give us your own feedback about how well you think that prompt did, or try several different prompts and provide a red line between what the AI gave and then what your final product was. One last thing, and again, you may be aware of this, generative AI plagiarism detection tools are not good enough yet. They cannot be relied on as a basis to institute a plagiarism charge, but they can be a basis for initiating an investigation. Time's up.
Thank you, Dean Pritikin, and there'll be a continued discussion on that topic later today on the CS Bar's agenda. Don't see any further hands for public comment, so I believe public comment is closed.
Thank you, everyone, for the public comment that we have received. We'll move on to agendized item 1, Chair's report. First and foremost, I'd like to take a moment to thank Dean Keller and Dean Leal, who are both with us in attendance, for the time that they've donated, again, to the CS bars, as well as to our community of the practice of law in California, and they've completed their terms. My name is Jay Frickberg from University of West Los Angeles. I'm a past chair of this committee from 2022. We also have Dean William Hunt from the California School of Law, and we are both attending this meeting on an interim basis. Regarding the upcoming CBE meeting, it is in person at the State Bar Los Angeles office, so you can fully participate and make comment by watching in the meeting live via Zoom as you are with this meeting. There are a number of updates of, I think, high interest for many of us, including the upcoming February 2025 bar examination, the first year law students exam in multiple choice format, and the introductory discussion of rules revisions for unaccredited law schools. With that, our agendized item number 2, director's report. I believe we still do not have a director's report. Is that correct?
Just a brief update, and then anything else Audrey may wish to add. We do have 2 interim members here, and as a result, we have 2 additional vacancies over what was announced earlier this spring on the CS bars. As a result, we will be reopening the application for this year for terms beginning in the fall. So if you are watching from the public, or you share this with deans of accredited or registered law schools that may be interested in serving, please do visit the CS bars page where you will find the application and return that application by August 30th. The new members will be selected by the new chair and vice chair of the Committee of Bar Examiners once those individuals are named. So we encourage people to apply, and particularly for schools that have not served before, continue doing so. It's certainly much more convenient now that the CS bars meets fully online, makes it easier for people from around the state to participate, and we'd love to have participation from every school. So thank you. And then prior to, Audrey, do you have anything to add in the director's report?
I don't. That's great, Natalie. Thank you.
Okay, and then Dean Frickberg, before we move on to the staff report, could we actually bump up the approval of the minutes in the agenda? So to complete that before we begin our discussions?
Absolutely. So we'll go to agendized item 5, minutes from the last meeting on June 18th, 2024. They've already been distributed to the committee members. Is there a motion to adopt or a discussion to correct the proposed minutes as received?
I would move to adopt. This is Dean Jessica Park speaking. I reviewed those and they seem to reflect what occurred at the meeting.
Do we have a second?
Dean Kevin Marshall, second.
Okay, we have a roll call vote to adopt.
William Hunt,
I confirm adoption.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Kevin Marshall,
Yes.
Jessica Park,
Yes.
Karen Travis,
Yes.
and Jay Frickberg.
Aye.
All right, with 6 ayes and 0 noes, the motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we will now go back to agenda item number 3, staff report. I will turn that over to staff.
Thank you. I'd like to begin with an update on the February 2025 bar exam. Cody Hunanian is out of the office today, and so Audrey Ching, our office director, will be filling in for Cody. Thank you and welcome, Audrey.
Thanks. Good to see everyone. Jay, nice to see you again in these meetings. So I think everyone knows, but at the July 18th board meeting, the board approved for the board chair and the executive director, Leah Wilson, to finalize the contract negotiations with Kaplan in time for us to use Kaplan developed questions for the February 2025 bar exam. I anticipate giving even more robust update in a few days, and there will be more news to share about that getting finalized. I don't have that right in front of me at the moment, but that is what I anticipate happening in time for February. And I'm sure there are lots of questions about that, which I can entertain and perhaps answer, depending on what the question is. or maybe not.
I think it was something that, like I was hearing from other deans as well. It's easier to comment if there's something finalized to comment on. So don't take this as no comments or lack of interest.
I
It
know.
just might be
It might be timing.
hard to do the
Yeah.
dialogue without.
No, it might be timing. So if there's more, if you tune in, the course
Yes,
had
keep
already for
tuned
the
in.
CBE meeting, there should be more to share. There could be news released even in advance of that. So it's just a little bit of a hiccup in terms of what day today is. But I know everyone's keenly interested, and we will do a lot of communication when everything gets finalized. Natalie, you're still on mute.
Let's proceed on to the next item, Chair Fickberg, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay, we've brought Adrienne Galang from our exam development team and admissions to discuss the June 2024 administration of the first year law students exam, as well as the plan for the release of results. So we'll be recognizing Adrienne. He'll be here in just a moment. Thanks, Adrienne. Welcome. Let's just take you off mute.
Oops, sorry.
Perfect.
Hi, everybody. So the June first year law students exam, it was given on June 25. It was administered by Prometric, both online centers across the state. There were a total of 243 applicants. 161 of those were first-time takers. Also wanted to note that there were 174 that actually tested online versus testing in person. Results, they were originally scheduled to go out on August 9, but because this was the first all multiple choice question exam, the state bar is directed to complete a standard setting study. That study was led by our psychometrician, ACS. And then the panel, it included law school deans and professors, applicant support and bar prep professionals, as well as a CBE member. And I do see one of those panelists here today. That panel, they met twice, and they did make a recommended minimum raw pass score. And then if it's approved, the raw score, it would be scaled to the same previous scale. So the minimum scaled pass score would still be 560. So there wouldn't be a change to the scaled score for applicants. The recommendation of this panel, it is going to the Committee of Bar Examiners meeting this Friday. And then that would push results to go out on Friday, August 30th. We did notify all of those 243 applicants of this change. And then this is just going to be a one-time delay. So after this exam, results will resume the same regular release schedule used with previous exams. But also now that it is all multiple choice questions, we're going to take a look at our processes to see where and how we can maybe shorten that release schedule in the future. Anyone have any questions?
Hearing no questions, I think we can move on to our next staff item.
Thank you,
Okay.
Ron.
Thank you. Thanks, Adrienne. Next, I'd like to welcome Patty Salazar from our eligibility team to discuss a recent change by the Committee of Bar Examiners affecting applicants with a first foreign degree in law that are not admitted in any jurisdiction. There's an additional option for them to establish the educational requirement to take the California bar exam. And Patty will be arriving soon to tell us all about it.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, welcome, Patty.
Okay. Oh, I just noticed how bright I am. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna speak on Teresa, can you share my slides? So as Natalie said, my name is Patty. I work in the eligibility group as a program analyst. And what I'm going to do is speak on foreign educated general folks that have a first degree in law and have not been admitted yet into any foreign jurisdiction. Can you go back one slide? I'm sorry. The next one. Thank you so much. So at the January 21st meeting, the Committee of Bar Examiners amended the guidelines for foreign educated folks with a first degree in law. That effective date went into effect as of March 1st to allow folks that had applied for the July exam to give them a chance to become eligible due to the policy change. Next slide, please. So what we look for when we review credential evaluation reports is that the approved credential evaluation agency determines that the applicant has a first degree in law and that it is equivalent to a U.S. Juris Doctor degree, or that the credential evaluation report indicates that they have a first degree in law and it meets the educational requirements to practice law in that foreign country. Also, we do now accept LSAC credential evaluation determinations as long as the determination meets either one of those requirements. Next slide, please. So what changed within the guideline was that now, as long as an applicant completes an LLM degree based on a minimum of 20 semester units, we will no longer look for those 12 units on the 4 separate bar exam tested subjects. However, if an applicant does not obtain that LLM degree, we will still look for the minimum 20 semester units and the 4 semester units on 4 separate tested bar subjects. Either scenario does require the professional responsibility course. All coursework must be completed within 36 consecutive months. And upon completion, we do require the LLM official sealed transcript to email to us. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a reminder of the scope of the subjects that we look for, which are the tested bar exam tested subjects. And also as a reminder with the professional responsibility course, the California specific professional mode is no longer required. That was removed back in June 2021. Okay, next slide, please. So if we do come across an applicant that does not meet the first degree in law, but say the credential evaluation agency determined that they have the minimum 60 semester units of undergraduate study, then that will qualify them to begin their study in a JD degree program in order to qualify for the bar exam, unless they want to do some other route like say law office study. Okay. Now, if the credential evaluation report comes back and says, you know, this person only completed 30 semester units, the applicant would then still need to complete those pre-legal requirements before beginning the study of law, or, you know, complete the additional 30 units, or, you know, take CLEP exams or what have you, but they would still need to fulfill the pre-legal educational requirements. Okay, does anyone have any questions for me?
I see a question from Dean Hunt.
Yes, Dean Hunt.
And the LSAC credential evaluation service be used for admissions to the JD programs or only for the LLM program?
Only for the LLM program. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have a couple, Patty. The first one
Yes,
is,
ma'am.
Would it be fair to say that all of the options that existed before remain? It's just now that there is an additional option, which is a student can complete an LLM degree from an ABA approved or accredited law school?
That's another thing that has also changed. Say if a person did not obtain an LLM degree, so we're looking at the 12 units, right, on 4 separate subjects. They know in the past, before the policy change, the required courses had to be taken in an LLM degree program. With the new policy change, now it can be in a non-degree program, in the JD program, or in an LLM degree program.
Okay.
So and the policy does state, new guidelines does state that while if an LLM degree is granted, those 12 units on bar tested subjects is no longer required, but it is strongly suggested still. So if a person wants to just take an LLM in taxation law, they can, as long as they still take that required PR course.
Okay, great. That really helps. So in fact, there are 2 additional options. And can students and administrators go online to our website to look for a recap of this information?
Yes, they can. And I'm sure everyone has my email also, so they can email me with any questions.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. I know that's really helpful because very often the administrators would like to go back to their students to give them a specific referral of a place that they can look up the requirements, or it's also great for members of the public who are not yet associated with the law school or the state bar, but thinking about becoming so. So thanks for taking that step.
No problem. Thank you.
And absent any further questions, thank you for the presentation. We have one more staff report left.
Okay, so that's related to the annual report. So I will take that one. I just wanted to remind everyone that as in past years, the annual report period will be for the period ending through September 15, 2024. We plan to issue the templates to both accredited and unaccredited law schools on September 20. They will look very similar to what you have seen from last year, but we did make one change to the 6061.7A disclosures based on discussion and recommendation from CS BARS, which is related to the cumulative pass rate. So in the past, the accredited law schools would use a 5-year cumulative pass rate that is pursuant to Rule 4.160D, and they have a binding minimum of 40% for that figure. That hasn't changed. The unaccredited schools used a calendar figure that included not only people that graduated during those calendar years, but also anyone else who took during that period. With slightly different time frames, CS BARS recommended that having a similar calculation would be helpful. So this year, you'll see that for question 8, both types of schools will be asked to list a cumulative pass rate using the MPR formula. It will be noted, however, that registered accredited schools do not have a minimum standard. We certainly hope they would set a target at that level or above, but there is not a rule at this time that requires that, and that will be noted. And then we'll also be adding the 4 most recent individual bar exam pass rates as question 9 for both of those. So we thank the CS BARS for a pretty spirited discussion over several meetings on that topic, as well as some additional formal discussion, informal discussion that took place at the CBE. But other than that, the plans that you make each year should be sufficient to help you get ready to fill out those forms. And as in past years, if you'd like to set up an appointment with the State Bar to go over questions as you prepare, or once you begin to put the data together, please do. We'd welcome that time with you as we have in the past. So we look forward to a successful reporting season, and thank you for a great suggestion.
Thank you. Any questions from our committee concerning the annual report? Hearing none, thank you for the presentation, and I'm sure we'll all be contacting you once the report comes out, if past is prologue. Our next agenda item is number 4, committee report. We had nothing submitted. Has that changed for the committee report?
Correct.
So moving on, going to our agenda item 6, consent calendar. Again, nothing was listed for that. Is that still current?
Correct.
We now move on to the meat of our discussions, the business agenda item 7. We have our discussion of ways to increase applicant and repeater participation in state bar programs. With that, I believe I'll turn over to you, Natalie Leonard.
Thank you. Thanks, Dean Frickberg. And I'd also like to recognize Ken Norse from our Lawyer Assistance Program, who will be co-creating this presentation with me. Many of you are already familiar with both the Bar Strategies and Stories program, which was conceived through a partnership with Indiana University and the Equity Accelerator there, and the Council on Access and Fairness, and it's been administered for several years now through the Office of Admissions with those schools and the Accelerator. And then this past year, this past bar exam, the LIP program launched a bar retaker support group. We've talked a little bit about those, so we'd like to give you a bit of an update, but then really focus our discussion lens on your experience in working with recent graduates as well as alumni, and how we can best encourage them to take these programs. We've seen excellent uptake, very high participation, but even once people sign up, not 100% of the people attend, or not 100% attend all sessions. And not every single applicant signs up, but we do have the capacity to help every single applicant at no charge. And we're going to take a couple of moments to show you some of the reasons why we would encourage the Bar Strategies and Stories program and potentially the Retaker Support Group for those who are qualified on everyone's agenda. So with respect to Bar Strategies and Stories, I'd like to ask Teresa to pull up the executive summary from the Accelerator, just to turn to page 9. So this is a report that's on the Indiana University's Equity Accelerator page. It's something that you can access publicly and see the entire summary. You've all been very patient with people signing up. The students can sign up, the applicants can sign up by checking a box when they register for the bar exam, or also from an individual email. And the reason we have those individual emails was so that the academic researchers could do the type of analysis that you'll find in the executive summary. Their methodology is described here. And if we slide down to page 9, there'll be a line graph. It's near the bottom. It's the next to last page. There we go. They looked at a number of things, and they controlled for cohort characteristics. So they looked at individuals who had family history of being in the area of law, first generation students, and those that are in underrepresented groups. And whether the cut score was 1390 or 1440, we saw advantage in particular for first generation law students and underrepresented groups. We saw advantage for every group, but the maximum advantage there. And you can see that we see it on both cut scores. So even as the cut score was relaxed, the result remains. And it takes less than 2 hours to complete this program. So we would like to begin a discussion after we hear from Ken to talk about how we can better incorporate this so that it's top of mind for your applicants graduating from your school, so that they can enjoy these benefits, which the State Bar is investing in, so that they can take this program at no charge. So we can go ahead and close that. I'd like to welcome Ken. He can talk a little bit about his program, and then we'd like to hear from each of you about what's working for your schools and also what barriers you face in encouraging participation as well. So welcome, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please bear with me, everyone, while I share my screen. I do have a brief presentation where I will be delving into some of the details for the General Bar Exam Retaker Support Program that we launched for this July bar. I just want to confirm first that everyone can see my screen. Yeah, great. So, as Natalie mentioned, I'm Ken Norse. I sit in the Lawyer's Assistance Program in the Office of Professional Competence. I joined the office in October from McGeorge School of Law, where I was Director of Student and Career Services. I was thrilled beyond belief when one of my first assignments was to think about bar exam programming and how the Lawyer Assistance Program can support that. So let's just take a look really quickly at that. We just finished leading a program for bar retakers from May to June in preparation for the July bar that we just had. When I reviewed data, bar exam outcome data, it was really clear to me immediately that the best predictor of bar exam failure is a prior failed attempt. And that was really what led me initially to focus on retakers. But it was also clear to me that retakers, supporting retakers would also be a great way to support first gen and historically marginalized people who are historically marginalized who are retaking the bar. And the criteria that I had was really threefold. First of all, we wanted to focus specifically on California law school grads only who were taking the general bar exam to make sure that we were screening out attorneys, for example, who were taking the attorney exam. And again, for the reasons I just mentioned, specifically retakers, not first-time takers. The program, as we developed the program, it was really clear that we needed to address two different kinds of retakers. And this is a terminology that I came up with. First of all, we needed to think about immediate retakers. These were people who at the beginning of May got their results from the February bar, and unfortunately they failed. And so these people needed to rapidly rebound to get in the right frame of mind for immediately beginning to study for the July bar. And then there was a second group, which were what I'm calling delayed retakers. And these are people who had not passed the California bar before the February bar, but had decided to re-engage. And that's a hurdle that this group needed to overcome. So we focused the program to address the needs of both immediate retakers and delayed retakers. And we wanted to format this program in a way that was complementary to the existing strategies and stories program that we're all familiar with. And we wanted to do this by having live interactive sessions, and we wanted them to focus on both mental health and study skills. In preparation for developing this program, I did speak to the DC Bar Lab, and they have a bar taker program, but it only focuses on mental health skills. And it was really important in my mind that we also included study skills in that as well. And then finally, we included 3 waves of invitations that were directly sent by email to retakers. That was done just before results were released for the May bar, so we could get those delayed retakers who had registered. And then we also had another wave to catch the people who had just found out at the beginning of May that they did not pass and who have decided to retake the bar. And then we had a final third round of email invitations sent directly to retakers as just at or around the final deadline. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background before delving into the structure here. So the program was a 4-day program. The first and fourth sessions were focused on mental prep. The first one, we wanted to catch people who needed to rebound from just finding out that they had not taken the bar. We wanted to help people to re-engage. The last session being mental prep to help them with game day strategies. Taking a look at this, our first session was held on May 20th. We held them in the evening from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. so that we could get people who were working full-time. They had time to commute home and sit down and take part in our program. The first session was a resilience reset, mind-body balance for exam success. That was led by Laura Lisby, who has been with the Lawyer Assistance Program as a group support leader. She also has her own private practice as well. We had 135 retakers attend that, approximately double the number registered for all of these sessions. We had about 50% turnout there. The second session for study prep was held on June 3rd. That's Strategize for Success, Mastering the MBE and Beyond. And that was led by Dean Mary Basic and her co-author, Professor Tina Schindler. Together, they've written sort of the books that many law schools in California use to help with bar prep. There we had 171 retakers attend. Again, registration was about double that. The third session was study prep. It focused on essays, PT, and memorization. That was held just a week after the prior session, again in the evening. That was held by my former colleague, Lindsay Harrington, who's the director of bar support and assistant professor of law at McGeorge. And we had 176 retakers attend that. And for the final mental prep session, we called that one Mindset Mastery, Self-Compassion, and Self-Care for Confidence. That again was led by our contract therapist here at LAP, Laura Lisby, and we had 115 attendees there. My best analysis of the attendance report showed that we had approximately 279 total unique attendees. We were very happy with the turnout and this initial structure of the program, but of course, it was really important for us to collect feedback as well. Just want to take a look at a little bit of that. And so, for example, I did issue surveys after each session to gather input on the format that we had, the content, and how useful attendees found the sessions. Unfortunately, our survey completion rates were somewhat low, between 10 to 20%, depending on the session. We're always looking for strategies to include that. Dean Basic, for example, suggested that we issue surveys maybe towards the tail end of each session live for people to fill out. One of the downsides in my mind of that is that people wouldn't have time to reflect on, for example, the utility of the program. So here's some specific feedback that we got from attendees. All sessions were perceived to have helped increase bar exam skills, and that was true for both the mental prep sessions and the study prep sessions. I have some just quotes that I pulled. I learned that there are more people suffering from anxiety regarding the bar exam. I'm not alone on this journey. I think that this was echoed in many different comments. People were really happy to be together in a group of other retakers who were experiencing the same feelings that they had, and those feelings were also validated. But we actually went one step beyond that, and we also helped try to propose strategies to deal with things like anxiety. Another quote, I really liked how we put the techniques in practice right away. That was especially true of the mental health preparation that we helped students with. The contract therapist went through exercises such as box breathing and gratitude exercises to help people try to get themselves in a good frame of mind when experiencing anxiety. Someone else mentioned that they loved learning about how to interpret their bar exam score from a prior failed attempt. And this is something that we did at the very beginning of the first study session. We felt that it was really important for retakers to be able to interpret their score so that they would understand how to better study for the next iteration of the bar that they were taking. Someone else also mentioned that they like the insight on how to customize a study schedule while working full time. Again, we made sure to include tips like that to recognize that people, retakers, have a lot of other demands on their times. Really positive general feedback, excellent instructors, great bar prep information. But I did want to include a few negative comments as well to just give us a full picture. This particular attendee felt like it was a pre-recorded session with no real interactions with both presenters and attendees. This was a fear that we had. We did try to make it as interactive as possible, but with 150 plus attendees, it's very difficult to have a meeting format for that kind of session. So we did hold it using Zoom on more of a seminar format where we had presenters and rather than ask for sort of verbal feedback or input from attendees, we simply had them type in sort of their sentiments or their answers in the Q&A box. Someone else mentioned that we needed more time. They thought that there were more questions that could have been answered. I can say that we're looking at expanding the session for this upcoming February bar to more than 4 different sessions so that we can address, for example, essays in a very specific session rather than lumping them in with PT, for example. We also had a comment that it wasn't geared for foreign LLM repeat takers. And that was true. It's something we knew going into this. I did not want to limit the retaker program to just JDs, though. I did want to make it as widely available as possible. But just given the unique needs of foreign LLM repeat takers, I don't think that we will be focusing specifically on that cohort, but we will be welcoming them to future sessions. So with all of this as a background, I just want to talk about some of the changes that we're thinking of making. We're looking at potentially a 6-week program with evening sessions again, and these would begin in mid-November. We're looking at potentially 2 sessions for the very first week, one sort of focusing specifically on that mindset reset, and another one that would also talk about score interpretation and about how to best plan a study strategy based on that. Second week would look at general study skills, timelines, and memorization. Third through fifth weeks would have these targeted sessions on essays, the MBE and PT. And then finally, the 6th week, the last session would focus on exam day strategies and mindset preparation. We're also thinking about how we can improve our supporting materials. All attendees did receive a copy of the presentation. And for the 2 study sessions, I assembled a frequently asked question sheet that summarized some of the questions that people had asked during the session. And that also included questions that we weren't able to get to during the session itself. We're also thinking of pre-recording certain topics like score interpretation so that people who weren't able to attend can listen to that, or people who attended and want to hear it again could take advantage of that. And then, of course, we're always thinking about other topics. In terms of program evaluation, as I mentioned, one idea is to administer the survey during each session itself, not waiting for a follow-up email there. And then in terms of our marketing plan, we do intend to send invitations directly to retakers again. We have the potential for additional messaging from law schools based on feedback from another committee. I actually developed a 1-pager on the retaker program that we hope was able to be used to get in contact with alumni. If you are still in contact with alumni, to let them know about that. But these are just some of the ideas that we have for our future retaker program. I'll be getting together with presenters from our program that we just held in May and June shortly after the academic year begins to sort of start our planning for the sessions that will begin in November. So that completes my presentation. I just wanted to turn it back over to Natalie. I'm really interested in the discussion that we can all have together.
Natalie, I think you're still muted.
Not helpful. Okay, Ken, before we get started, do you want to give a little teaser about the program that you're working on for the fall?
I do, absolutely. I love the fact that I was brought in to help with developing new programming. I'm actually in the middle of developing an ADHD support program that any person in California who would qualify for lab support, and that is law students, bar applicants, and attorneys. I'm creating this program in direct response to feedback that we've had from so many directions for the need. I know, coming from McGeorge School of Law, that a large number of students had ADHD. They believe they had ADHD. Some of them got accommodations. And so I know that there is this wave of junior attorneys who are going to be entering our profession. And what better time than now to interact with them? I'm working with a separate contract attorney from our lawyer assistance program. She's been with us for over 19 years. And I'm also looking into pulling in some outside consultants to help us with, real practical practice management advice, for example, in the context of ADHD. Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. So a couple of things. We also had this discussion with the Law School Council last week, and I wondered if you'd like to recap the feedback or have me do so before we get going.
Yes, just on a high level, I can say that, one strategy that was mentioned for increasing participation in the retaker program would be to either, add it, for example, on the application in the same as a checkbox that someone can check off in the same way that the Stories and Strategies program, has people register. Another idea that was suggested is maybe in the confirmation email from admissions that goes to a retaker, there might be mention made of this program. Another idea was to make sure that we have sort of a state bar webpage landing page for the retaker program so that people could be pointed to that to sort of get all of the information in one page to make it easier for people like you to point alumni to, if they have interest in the program. Other ideas were great substantive ideas, such as, I tried to incorporate quotes that I could find that successful retakers, had mentioned. It's a difficult process, just keep working, to give people hope. But it was mentioned actually by my former academic dean, Mary Beth Moylan from McGeorge, who's on that committee, that maybe we want to consider inviting outside speakers. And of course, I immediately thought of a mini panel discussion where we could have more interactivity with attendees. They could submit questions to this mini panel so that we can get, sort of provide role models for bar retakers. On a high level, Natalie, those were just a few of the things that came to mind. Was there anything else that connected with you?
A couple of things, but I'll just take it through and see how folks are doing here. One piece of feedback that we heard overall was that most of the administrators on the Law School Council felt the mindset portion was extremely important and applicable to all of their takers, whether for bar strategies or for the retaker support group. But their own experience internally at their schools was that when something was labeled mindset or mental health strategy versus a skills program, they invariably saw lower attendance, even though they thought it was extremely important and they saw excellent results. Does that resonate with this group? And if so, do you have any thoughts or feedback? Right now, in particular, the retaker support group is divided, alternating between bar skills and a mental health management type of format. What's been your experience? The Law School Council schools talked about a couple of things, either considering a name change or intertwining those strategies, and they felt that it might improve overall attendance because we saw a pattern similar to what they see, lower for the mental health focus sessions, higher for the skills session. What's it like at your schools? Dean Park.
Hello. I think it is interesting that was brought up. I definitely think students just identify themselves as wanting more practice and wanting more opportunities to practice skills. I think for everything else, that takes more time or more of a relationship at times. So some students are interested right away, but there's definitely a percentage of them that may not even take the resource until there's more of a relationship built up. And I definitely think some of them like to be able to tap on their that resource as needed, or, at the point they sort of self-identify needing it versus, they will make that if it's part of a series up front. So.
Dean Hunt.
I know with both our FYLSE review course and our bar review course that we offer, we intertwine. And so instead of putting a day aside just to discuss the mental health aspects, we'll do a little bit of that at the top of the hour, then we'll move into something substantive, and then the next class session come back around and readdress the mental health aspects of preparing for the bar exam and the first year law students exam, which is, you know, a monumentally stressful undertaking. And I think that there might be something to that, even if you call it a name change, but intertwine the two things together at the top of each of the 6 programs. You could do a little bit on it, or have a big chunk of it, but get them there under the idea of its study skills, because that's what they think they need.
Dean Travis.
Yes, I agree completely with the labeling issue. And I think for our students, who are all working adults, so we're dealing with adults, once they don't pass the first time, it's very difficult to get them to devote a substantial amount of time to restudy. And I think, I don't know if any consideration's been given to offering these sessions on weekends, because I think for our students who work late hours, even when they are preparing for the bar exam and are first coming home from work and, you know, trying to stay awake to do something bar related during the week, that they would be much more amenable to a program that captured them on the weekends. But I think for our students too, we really frame support being related to bar taking skills. And we've developed a mentor program where we take our bar prep course, and when somebody doesn't pass, we assign them a mentor from a previous bar prep course to kind of be paired with them and provide support. And we found that to be immensely successful, because it's, you know, you have someone to relate to who's, in our case, gone to the same school. We're a really small school, so you feel a relationship right away. And I, you know, at least from what I can tell informally, and we need to start tracking it more formally, that's been very successful. More successful, at least for our group, than going to, you know, a session during the week where you don't know anybody, and overcoming the embarrassment factor, I find is a real issue for, you know, our student body who have never failed anything in their life. And they, you know, don't pass the bar the first time. And I'm talking about physicians, CPAs, people who have taken a lot of exams and underestimate the bar exam, as many people do. So that's been, in my sense, that kind of personal connection with somebody who can help guide you through, and calling it skills, even though it's a combination of mental health support and skills support.
Thanks, Dean Travis. Dean Frickberg.
Just a couple points on the question of how could we increase participation. One, is it possible to create the bias towards they have to opt out rather than opt in? You know, the only concern I have then is just the danger of over acceptance, which is a great problem to have. You know, that way they have to affirmatively say, I do not want to participate. And we know most won't, as we're talking about that 50% attrition. That's very similar to what I've seen, you know, for UWLA as we go through. But I think then it creates a bias that they will participate. And most of our students, I think, collectively just need that little nudge. You know, they might not want to do it on their own, but if we nudge them towards that, as we do for academic support, you must do this, that bias, then they participate willingly. A second one, I think that would have a lot of buy-in. I don't know if it's possible. We have the quotes. Is it possible to have quotes from, if not a specific school like UWLA, UCLA, but a type of school, Cal Bar graduate, registered school graduate, ABA school graduate. Have those quotes given to the deans. That way it's a peer recommendation that we could send out. I think we all understand that law students have a very low trust environment they operate within. But if they hear it from a near peer or a former peer, that there's more buy-in as they go through. Also, I just wanted to echo what Dean Hunt was saying. I think sometimes there's a bias against anything that's mental health related. They just don't want to self-identify that need for whatever reason. And similarly, we've tried professional development / mental health. They cross over, I think, a lot, where you'd have the beginning of a class, for when I'm teaching remedies as an example, and that would be the beginning portion. So everyone has to go through that just as a mental setting, and then we go into the actual content. And I think it's similar to, you want to eat your dinner, but you have to eat your vegetables first. So you take that part that you don't want to do first, put it in there because they're going to stay through that to get to the part that they want. And I found that also bias has helped me increase attendance in similar functions.
And you might remember that when the BAR Strategies and the Stories program was introduced, it was called the Productive Mindset Intervention Program. And taking this advice to heart, it was later recast as the BAR Strategies and Stories program. Dean Park.
Oh, thank you. Just what Chair Frickberg said reminded me too. Whenever there was a chance for students to see that others like them made it, or for example, you actually saw a student work product, I think that really engaged them in a deeper way, because besides being told, how you can do it from experts, like hearing from someone who has been through it before and just has that recent experience of going through it before, finding it doable, being a voice to kind of demystify the experience. I think that's important. And when I think about, there's the working adult piece of it, but there's also someone who has recently passed this. And I think something that I've heard from students, although I haven't really thought about it in a larger way, is just, I think when they hear less about the voices of those who recently passed, they kind of feel more distant from them. They kind of feel like their story is less real, or it's going to be sort of less translatable to something they can do today that will help them pass. So I don't know how that would logistics, but for engagement, I think maybe it's the quotes, like Chair Frickberg said, but that there are faces of recent passers that the people you're engaging can identify with and say, okay, their recent story can translate to mine. This is not a mystical process. I think that's really helpful. And I think it's something that can even overcome the, oh, I'm in a room of strangers feeling, because if there is a sense of, but there are people in that group that either want to, head the same direction I have, or just pass that hurdle that I'm trying to pass, it kind of naturally motivates them to want to go.
Thanks. Dean Marshall.
Yeah, first of all, I think this has been a great initiative from the outset. And what I think the messaging that you're doing just by putting this program together is that the California State Bar is acknowledging that there are many, many people who fail, which what that means is when they hear from the State Bar and us schools that their experience of failure is perhaps not a one-off, they're not alone, and that California's got the hardest bar exam, and we're proud of that. But at the same time, speaking to that embarrassment, oh my God, I'm a failure, to remind them that they're not alone is incredible. And I think that's what this whole optic does, in addition to providing, I think, really value-added support. I think in the messaging, it might even can be that, the quotes are great, but what about reminding them, because
what is that statistic? We always hear the total number of takers, it's about a 50%, right? Well, if I'm one of those 50% who doesn't pass, and I realize, oh my God, this doesn't make me a loser. I'm just part of that 50% that didn't pass, and there's hope for me. Maybe you put in that quote at the top, that this year, 50% of the people who sat for the bar did not pass. And we are here now to support, because it can be done, it can be accomplished. That's what's just resonating with me. And then the last thing is, yes, please send us law schools brochures so that we can invite all these students. Give me the talking points. Give me the PowerPoints that I can send and market. I mean, I would be even interested in hosting a night here at the law school while you are presenting with refreshments, and so we have a whole body of people saying buy into this program. So yeah, I just think you're doing a great job, and help me help you advertise it.
Wow, just some incredible ideas from the group. Thank you.
And I have a question about to piggyback off your comment, Dean Marshall, on data. Does the data of the program intertwined with personal stories to create connection help? So if we are to say, hey, beyond the JD education that you've received, over the next 6 weeks, one of the most valuable 2-hour periods you can spend is this. We are seeing
I just
this
leaped
type
at
of,
that. Yeah, I'm sorry to overtalk you. When you
Yeah.
put up that data, Natalie, did you put that report up that showed that the impact of that program? I wrote a note, I need that. I need that to be able to share with that there is a statistical indication. I don't know if there was a significance, but clearly
it is.
that's very helpful for me to sell the program.
Yes, so we can send it out to everyone here, and for the members of the public, it is publicly available on the Indiana University Accelerator website. We can see if we can get it linked to our website, and it's very robust data over a period of years. We're seeing a consistent trend over that time period through the cut score change and disaggregated by cohort. This program has had strong results for everyone. So, and we have heard about some schools thinking about, and I wonder if any schools here have tried something like what you talked about, Dean Marshall, for the bar strategies and stories, where the bar strategies and stories, you sign up when you're registering for the bar exam or shortly thereafter. And then at the beginning of the study period, you receive the course. It's fully on demand. You can decide when to take it. But some schools have talked about creating a place like that, saying, hey, here's the day where we will have the pizza, we will be doing the thing, come on in, or, we'll have an open study hall in a Zoom situation when it's online, and we'll celebrate when we finish. The program concludes with writing a letter. We'll come in after we've sent off our letters. Has anyone actually tried that so far in this group? Dean Frickberg.
One area that we've experimented with and been rather consistent for the past decade, we will publish our pass list publicly for all the students. So that way, if they see someone they knew before who has achieved retaker or first time, we don't indicate whether it's first time or retaker, just that they ultimately passed. That has helped. Also, we have our own supplemental bar review that the students can take for no credit or credit if they want. We always invite someone who just got their bar results back from that. So it's a highly emotional point for them. It conveys that it can be done. I was someone from this school. I did it. You can do it as well. And finally, just want to again compliment the bar for even taking this on, and then not taking it on, but also improving and going through. And a parallel program that I was very happy I saw was the Imposter Syndrome Toolkit. And to me, it's a very similar concept. Many least for the CALs that I've experienced, first generation professionals, they don't feel they belong. Even though they do, they've earned their way, they just don't believe it, and they have that mental hiccup. So I think the more that it gets echoed to them, you can do this, others have done this, and then we see people pass better and faster.
Yeah, and that's a relatively new product too, the imposter syndrome toolkit that we've got available also at no charge on the website that I would encourage everyone to use. Yeah, Ken, are there any other thoughts or areas where you'd like some feedback as to these programs?
Yeah, I love the feedback that the more information I can get to you, the better, so you can help promote it. Is there anything specific that would be helpful? As I mentioned last cycle, when I presented to another committee, someone had recommended that I come up with a one-pager, which I do plan to do for this next cycle. But any other seeds you'd like to plant in my mind as I re-engage with my co-presenters for this next, for the February bar?
And for example, one thing we did was there are now Instagram and LinkedIn posts about this. Is that helpful to you in addition to receiving an email or a document, or do you communicate with the students in that way? Dean Marshall.
Yeah, we do communicate using Instagram, so it would be helpful if we could adopt it and send that out for sure. And then I just want to reiterate, Ken, kind of to Natalie's point too, in that one pager, the data, the graph, there's something that pops that says it works.
And it's free.
Very true. And we definitely want to improve our survey response rate specifically to that end. I hope to have other news in the future about some things I want to do with that data, but to encourage participation is a great aim. Thank you.
Dean Frickberg.
Just to Ken Norse's last question, have we done any type of correlation studies concerning working full-time, part-time, and published that? That's always been one of the anecdotal ones I've seen within my community. I think that would help. We have repeaters that pass once they stop working for 2 months to study for the bar, and they get used to being able to work and study in law school, but it's a different creature for the bar. So I think any data on that is very helpful, so they learn the first time from someone else's mistake rather than their own mistake. The second one's more of a selfish one. Is it possible to share the curriculum with law schools in California? Because if it is working, we can always incorporate that into our beginning and ending classes. It might take away some of the efficacy at your end because they might already receive those skills, but I think it would be better for California as a whole.
Got it. Thank you so much. I've definitely taken a note of that.
And for members of the public, we'd like to hear from you too. So if you do have thoughts or comments about the program, we do have the public comment website email that is on the agenda. Or Ken, is there a specific email that they should use, such as the LAP email? Is that a possibility as well?
It absolutely is. We have a very simple email address at the Lawyer Assistance Program. It's lap@calbar.ca.gov, just lap@calbar.ca.gov. Anything sent about this retaker program will be eventually routed to me.
And then I'd just like to confirm something that I bet everyone here knows, but students may ask. This information is not available to the graders. So they will not know who has taken these programs. It will not bias their grading in any type of way. The LAP program is very careful about personally identifying information in all situations, and it is no different as to this program. And we appreciate that commitment. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you so much, everyone. This has been incredibly helpful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So I think we'll now move on to our next point of business, agenda item 7.2, discussion of priority list for unaccredited rules reviews, present the June 2024 Committee of Bar Examiners meeting. I'll turn again over to Natalie Leonard.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate everyone's patience with me. With Cody away, I'm talking more than I normally do in a meeting, but I've really come here to hear you talk, and thank you for your patience. We have some new members today, so I want to just go back through the history of this program, this project just briefly, and talk about what's coming up next. So everyone knows that the accredited rules were refashioned and replaced. After a 2-year transition period, they became fully effective January 1st of this year. Around that same time, the State Bar Admissions Office began a review of all of the remaining rules throughout the admissions program, including the unaccredited law school rules. So at several meetings last year, we brought forth the idea that this would be happening for the unaccredited rules too. We asked both CS BAR's members and members of the public to submit their thoughts and questions and ideas. We went back through CBE minutes. We went back through our own questions as staff, the questions that we received during inspection reports, to start to create a priority list. We coupled that with the data that we found in creating the law school performance report and the law school profile report that were presented to the CBE, and also these groups. The committee identified several initiatives in particular that were of interest to them over the period of through the fall and then into January to March. We brought those here for CS BARs to discuss. And then today, what I want to focus on is that in June, we brought a more specific priority list for the rules to the committee to direct the revision process. And if we could have Teresa bring up that document. And this is the June priority list, and we'll be looking for the chart of the priorities. It actually spreads over 2 pages on the chart. Thank you. That's the first page. And then, yeah, and then that's the second. So let's start on the first page. And then on my screen, it's cutting off just a little bit. I don't know if we can get the full screen for people to see. The source of this document is the June agenda, which is up on State Bar's website in the meeting archive. So members of the public and also members here have full access to this document.
Natalie, is this better, or which page would you like to look at?
That's exactly the page. For me, it's cutting off, but how about members? We can see most of it though, so let's go ahead and proceed. Okay, so the goals for the changes really are they're in several areas. The first one is consumer protection and transparency. Goal is to enhance transparency and accountability, and also to clarify language of the rules where there have been questions over the years, either just due to ambiguity or due to change or evolution in legal education. Next page. So let's go on to page 4, the top of page 4. Next area, student success and preparation for licensure, looking at admissions practices, and also encouraging and supporting excellence in both admissions and also teaching / curriculum. And then finally, dealing in evidence and data-driven decision-making. So to make sure as often as possible that both the State Bar and the schools are making decisions based on evidence. So these are the 3 areas that are guiding the proposal that's going to be discussed on an introductory basis later this week at the Committee of Bar Examiners. And so essentially, as we've been doing all the way along the process, ideas are being introduced for discussion at the Committee of Bar Examiners. If they are accepted or received positively, then we bring them here to CS BARs for further feedback, and then also feedback back to the committee. So these are the specific areas. I think they're not a surprise based on the prior discussions that we've had here. But are there any initial thoughts or questions about these overall areas? I'm guessing not, because these are basically things that flow from past discussion here. So as far as where we go from here, I wanted to make a couple of suggestions to see what you may think. On Friday, the Committee of Bar Examiners will be discussing a proposed set of revisions that are already posted up on the website. To the extent that they are received positively, or that they are received positively in a modified form, in full or in part, what I would encourage is that immediately after the meeting and prior to the next CS BARS meeting, that we get these out to the committee. The public will also be able to see them because they'll be up on the website, and then also any changes will be memorialized in the minutes, so that we can prepare for a detailed discussion of feedback at the next CS BARS meeting. And one thing that that would be helpful to me as staff is if one or two volunteers from CS BARS could be available to staff for questions as we're putting this together, either a question that we might receive from CBE, or just a way to focus the questions and be respectful of your time as we're getting ready for the next CS BARS meeting. So I'll turn it back to Dean Frickberg for a moment to get some discussion about possibly proceeding that way or another way that works for you.
Any discussion from our group? Anyone would like to volunteer?
Dean Park.
Hello, thank you so much for summing up on the project. I did get some questions from registered law school deans, so I know this is a really important project for them to kind of be aware of the progress on. And I know they will be they're very interested to make sure that they can get stakeholder input and sort of see the same materials of just what these revisions are based on. I would just say, you know, we're at a point for CS BARS where we do have 2 interim members. And so as a continuing member for the registered law school dean, you know, I'm happy to be a point of continuity. I think that's something that's really needed for something that's as complex as this is or could be. So definitely would be involved, happy to be involved in that group. And I'm also very aware that those who are also in the registered law school category, they definitely want to know, you know, what's the clear timeline to respond to things and to provide public comment. So I understand what's coming up in the CBE meeting. It is for discussion and very supportive of it coming back to CS BARS for a point of detailed discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for volunteering. And I also wonder if there might be an accredited dean that's interested in volunteering, only because accredited schools have gone through the period of a transition. And so to the extent that you have input as to how to make a smooth and positive implementation, that can be helpful. And so perhaps give that some thought, and I'll send out a note afterward if someone may be interested. So I would encourage those of you here on CS BARS, but also those out in the public watching this, a proposed rule set is already up and available on the CBE website. So as we've said, actually under the agenda for the CBE meeting on Friday, as we've said from the beginning, we definitely encourage feedback at any point. We're very close to the CBE meeting on Friday. People may want to comment at that meeting, or alternatively, right after seeing that discussion. We would encourage as much feedback as possible, as early as possible, so that it will be part of the initial discussion before anything further proceeds to the CBE. We've taken the comments that we've gotten all the way along over the past almost 2 years, as we've been putting this out to CS bars, but we appreciate messages being reinforced, and we also appreciate new ideas. So I would encourage everyone to take a look on the CBE Friday agenda, to take a look at that full set there. And also to realize that we did create a priority list. It doesn't preclude any additional changes or ideas if there are additional. Whether it happens in this package or future, I think we should all be thinking about it. All of you know, and all of you have seen, especially since COVID, the legal education space is changing so rapidly, maybe more rapidly than ever. And one hope that we have is that the rules will keep up and be a strong and clear and supple framework that will allow you to make the changes you need to stay current, as everything is just changing so quickly in the actual legal education space. So in brief, yes, the time to make the comment is now. The most helpful feedback is feedback that we receive ideally in August or early September, recognizing that many of you are also doing your orientation. So stretching that out over, a month time frame. And it can be in writing, it can be verbal, it can be both. Those public comment emails do not change for CBE or CS bars, so you don't have to worry about exactly when the meeting is. Best thing is to get the feedback in. Dean Frickberg.
Sorry about that.
Oh,
Just
no worries. Dean Park, do you have another comment, or is your hand up from before?
Yes, I did. So, and this might be just me, but because it's so important for people to kind of know what platforms things are housed, is there anything additional you can just say about the agendas and how they're housed and how people can get to them? Because at least for me, I noticed that the interface and the URLs changed. So someone in the public could also, I need that a little more guidance if they
Oh,
haven't.
great idea. Yeah,
before.
thank you. So what Dean Park's referring to is that we started using a new software for agendas. So you'll notice a couple of things. The first thing is that when you want to access an agenda, you'll find it in the same place as always. You'll go to the CalBar site, you'll choose About Us and Meeting Agendas, and that's where you'll find the current agendas. The actual agenda itself will be under a button that says HTML agenda. So that's where you'll find the current one, and that's where you'll find this rule set proposal. In order to access the archive, because that is stored in our prior software, you'll go to the Committee of Bar Examiners page. So if you'd like to see any of that previous, so for example, the committee's discussion of the law school performance report or the profile report, the proposed prioritization items that were discussed in January and March, the priority items that we talked about today from June, all of those will continue to be available in that archive that's on the Committee of Bar Examiners page. And you can download those PDFs, you can download them onto your computer to be able to use as part of thinking about your comment, and also to share with your colleagues as well.
Thank you.
Great idea. Thank you. Dean Frickberg.
Just wanted to add a point of reflection, different but similar. I was on the CS bars from 2019 through 2020 when we went through the same process for accredited law school rules. And I myself was very apprehensive, of course, and protective, as I think we all are. But I think it was a very collaborative approach, especially with Paul Kramer being both a member of the CS bars as well as the CBE. So I thought that he was excellent in having a voice to amplify what the CS bars was discussing. And I think most will agree now, overall, we're in a much better situation with the current accredited rules than we were with the prior ones, which were sometimes confusing and counterintuitive. So I would just encourage everyone to participate. They can participate, be part of the discussion, and we can make sure this is a helpful and useful process, just like it was for the California accredited law schools.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I think we might be ready for our AI discussion.
So moving on to our last point of business and our last agenda item, we have our discussion of the integration of artificial intelligence topics in law schools, curricula, and faculty guidance for the use of artificial intelligence in law schools, exam development, and grading. And I'll hand
That's
back.
true. Okay, so Teresa, if you could put up the PowerPoint presentation, try to say this title 10 times fast. But really what we're talking about, and I'd like to thank Dean Pritikin, who came a little bit earlier and talked about his school's use of AI. They also have an AI course that they've been offering, and I know that several other schools have begun to do so or have a course in development. But here, Dean Frickberg said it so artfully. I'll try not to say that title again. But what we're looking at is this. The State Bar created some practical guidance for attorneys for the use of AI. They issued that. You've also got similar guidance from the state of New York, state of New Jersey as well. And the Board of Trustees asked the Committee of Bar Examiners to look at the role of AI and think about some practical guidance related to exam development, grading, or other topics that may be relevant to both law students and law schools. So that's part of what we're doing here, getting some feedback toward the hope of creating a draft set of practical guidance that we can share with the committee. Right now it's scheduled for an introductory discussion in December. So let's go to the next slide. So in terms of background, COPRAC is the group that put together a consortium of individuals with expertise in the area of generative AI in the practice of law, and they created the draft practical guidance that was ultimately adopted. Since then, the ABA has created its own task force as well, and now it's the committee's turn in concert with CS Bars and the Law School Council to look at this as well. Let's go to our next slide. And then Teresa, I'm seeing the same thing. Are people seeing the full slide or is the right-hand side cutting off? You're seeing the full slide? Okay, great. Then let's keep going. All right, so when we talk about AI, just to think about terms, AI is a bucket term. It's got a number of things, but the key two areas are generative artificial intelligence. So it creates an output based on an input. One example, you might remember during the law school assembly, we brought a professor from Berkeley Law, and he talked about one everyday use he had, which is a tone check. His students told him he was too direct, and so he would place his emails through generative AI and ask them to be clear but friendly. And that's how he used generative AI in that small way every day. Machine learning is something a little bit different. So that's creating a neural network that can figure out patterns to help create predictions. So and are people familiar with those two terms and how they're a little bit different from each other? Yeah, kinda. I see the kinda. This is a new area. We're figuring it out together. Okay, let's keep going. When the State Bar is thinking about this, we're thinking about a number of things. We're thinking about the cost of AI technology. We're thinking about how to train the model and how to limit bias in any type of model we use. We're thinking about the security of the data, whether the training data and our own input data remains private in the way that we need it. And what is the level of adoption in the State Bar as well as outside? And we are doing training inside on AI topics here at the State Bar, as probably you are at your school. Next slide. So I wanted to get some feedback from each of you, and we posed these same questions to the Law School Council. Right now, does your school currently offer or plan to offer students classes or other opportunities to learn how, and I would add, and when, to use artificial intelligence? Dean Marshall.
We do not offer one yet, but we have launched, I guess, a dive into developing an upper level course that will incorporate IA in terms of the practice-ready lawyer. And we brought in some outside firms to help us develop what they would like for us to do in that regard and but it's moving so fast that it's hard to know, to capture what the subject should be. But yeah, we definitely are going to offer something.
Dean Frickberg.
Yeah, we actually offered our first AI and the law course last spring. And the very first assignment that we created within that, we had two professors, younger, more technologically proficient professors teach the class. And the first assignment was to create UWLA's AI policy. And so that way the assignment was created collaboratively between the professors and the students. And then that was given then to our academic senate for adoption. And to me, it brings back echoes of the late 80s, early 90s, when LexisNexis was first coming out in online research and the concerns, what will that do to the legal profession, similar to the lawyers that used to go to the library for every book. And I think if anything, AI, like online research, is just an accelerant. It's not really creating in the sense that we think of creation, but it's accelerating the process as we go through. And at least for UWA, our biggest concern was citation. So that people can use AI, just as you can use research, but are you citing it? What is your work versus the AI's work? I think that's our focus so far.
Great. Any others? I can't see all of you on my screen, so let's see. Let's see another hands. Okay, well, it's great to know. Dean Park.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if we moved on. I just wanted to echo Chair Frickberg on how the focus has largely been on can you correctly and accurately and transparently identify what's your work versus how you're using AI in your work. That's been a really important point for us to add to policy and to set expectation with students and faculty.
Thanks. So it sounds like a lot of schools are already thinking about it or actually even taking action. Okay, let's go to our next discussion question. Still on the topic of curricula. Do you think separately or do you intertwine together thinking about the legal and ethical considerations of using artificial intelligence? And what do you feel like is important for your students to know or for you to know about any other entity that might be using AI that you may engage with? Dean Frickberg.
Well, I think the most important one you already raised within your prior slide, the confidentiality, especially as an attorney, and making sure that people are self-aware that if they're using a program like ChatGPT-4, what you're putting into that system is becoming part of the public record. So we've made sure within our professional responsibility class that's being addressed, as well as within that AI class that I referenced earlier.
Thank you. Any other thoughts in this area? Okay, let's keep going. And we can go to, so what are the top concerns or questions that your law school is considering regarding adopting AI-focused courses and opportunities? So, for example, what is the information that you need to know or that you want to know? And is there any information you want to know from the State Bar? Dean Frickberg.
I think in this area, the top concern is really how can we learn to leverage AI? It's not going to go away. So how can we learn to leverage it similar to the way lawyers leverage paralegals and clerks in doing some of the preliminary work? So how can we do that in an ethical way within our professional responsibility rules? The secondary one is, of course, the plagiarism. At least so far in our experience, when we've run trials of using ChatGPT-4 and others to answer quote unquote law school questions, and I've submitted those to professors without knowing the source, they've been failing answers. And so I haven't been as concerned with the plagiarism because I think it's self-rectifying, at least in the current incarnations that I've seen. But really, how can we leverage this since it's coming? So I almost feel like we're selling horses at times, and we see a car drive past. So we have to learn how to make our cars and drive our cars now.
And I think you'll remember at the law school assembly, we brought a professor from Vanderbilt who created an AI student in the computer science class. And the student did well on the first few very basic homework assignments. And as the semester progressed and as the assignments progressed, the AI bot dropped off significantly in performance. Okay, next slide. Is your law school thinking about or currently using AI to develop exam questions or other materials, or in any other aspect of the day-to-day administration of the school? We heard about the Berkeley professor's tone jack. Any examples in your school? Looks like Dean Fickberg.
Well, everyone was just still thinking on the matter. I thought I would jump in.
Yeah.
Our current faculty conversations, we just had one this past Saturday, so it's very fresh. There's a concern that AI, as you're mentioning, can quickly solve basic questions. So similar to MBE type questions. So do we now need to deviate away from basic MBE questions? Even in a controlled environment, there's always concern as a student can have a virtual machine on their computer and operate the exam software within that virtual machine while their computer itself is still accessing ChatGPT or some other parallel program. And it's a constant game of cat and mouse. So our resolution has been probably moving more away from the multiple choice questions just to prevent that from causing any discrepancies in grading.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dean Park.
Thank you. Sorry, it took a little while to unmute. I would say at this time we are open, but very cautiously. And just even on the administrator side, we've actually just done a lot of collection of resources, whether it's trainings or books or different things. So just ways that our faculty can be on the same page of thinking what AI is. And I think even while AI is out there and it's very much trained by the data you give it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people think about that. I think, once there's the more common AI tools out there, you kind of think, you get comfortable with thinking how someone else has fed the data. But in terms of our own development, we try to have our faculty try to think about it the same way. Something that has come up that's been really interesting, and I think sort of helps inform faculty about whether they would even want to use that or not versus some of the banks of materials that we have, is the more that there's trainings on AI, they talk about what AI can do now versus maybe what it can do in the future, but is not doing so well right now. And for example, something that's really benefited me as law school dean is actually the fact that there's other departments at the school that help me to see how they're dealing with the AI or seeing limitations with their different topics that are not law. And so math has come up as an example. How AI deals with images and graphs has been a topic. And so I think that's just been helpful, even if we're not setting a policy or practice at the law school yet. When the faculty meetings or when the distribution of information is kind of including all these lessons that faculty are learning and then using to try to get on the same page together. I think that's doing a lot already to make faculty think about what they're jumping into when they're tapping into it. And I think we're open to it in the sense of, once we understand what AI is reliably good at and doing ethically well, yes. But I think there's this group understanding of like, that takes time to develop that understanding. So don't use it recklessly. And by the way, these are the things that AI might be good at later, but it's not good at now. And if you're not aware of that, you might not be really understanding the tool that you're using. And I think that faculty learning process, that's what we've been able to convey to students. Because as you're right, as we're learning about it, we can only convey forward to the students what we're learning, right? So.
True. Okay. Well, it's very helpful to go through these thoughts. Couple of questions. As we're putting together some draft practical guidance, I would encourage everyone here, not only at as law school deans, but also as practicing attorneys or previously practicing attorneys in most cases, to know the practical guidance and to keep that in mind. In particular, I think we've talked about it enough to know that probably there's not any school yet that's using AI to develop exam questions or other materials. Although we did hear from Dean Pritikin how at his school, they're using it as just sort of a very early thought starter type of idea. Is anybody else in that thought starter stage or more in the thinking stage? Would sound like.
I would say thinking about it, but not as a department, thinking it can be a thought starter.
Okay. All right, very good. I'm wondering if there's one person who'd be willing to serve as a contact for us as we continue to review AI. We're looking at it not only in Ed Standards, but with our analyst team in admissions and also our wider ORS team. For example, potentially Dean Marshall, I know that your school makes very data-driven decisions relative to the bar exam and other possibilities, or might there be a contact that we could reach out to as we're working over the next couple of months?
Are you asking if I would be the contact?
I'm asking if anyone would, including you, be a
No,
pleasure.
I'd be happy to. I'm very interested in this topic, so I'd be happy to.
Also somewhat trying to balance the load. I know that there is a
Sure.
lot going on and trying not to, trying to respect everyone's time and increase everyone's participation.
No, I'm happy to do it.
That would be terrific. It's really helpful for us to have a staff contact along the way. Okay, so those were the things I had to bring forward. I think we're at the conclusion of the agenda, unless Dean Frickberg, you have any other comments or questions?
No, I think we've completed all of our agendized items. We're actually 8 minutes early, which is excellent. Did want to say thank you for the privilege of being able to come back as the interim chair and to assist. It's been great fun. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And as for the next meetings, once the chair and vice chair of the CBE are named, the new members will be named, and we'll work with them to create the schedule for next year. I'll just make a note, thinking ahead past this meeting to the October meeting. It's often the Friday after Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day, but this time it's the Friday prior. So just to alert you, because for some that is a 3-day weekend, and just making you aware of it for your own planning, because we'd love to have as many people participate as we can.
Thank you. And absent any additional comments from anyone, I think we can now stand adjourned and complete our meeting.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Take care.